Welcome to the Barrett Hall podcast. My name is Brittany Lowe. I'm the founder and CEO of Bea, and today I am with Katie Kitchens, the co-founder and editor-in-chief of FabFitFun. FabFitFun has millions of subscribers, and it brings nice things to nice people at nice prices. Katie, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so excited to be here.
I gotta say, when I first met you, I knew I was going to love you because you had Bea purple hair.
It's true. I love a little purple in my life. I feel like I just stopped the purple, and I don't know why I did. I should have waited to this moment.
Seriously.
I needed the purple, but I do have the purple
your nails. I was like, okay, at least we're coordinating the outfit, the nails. But I was like, do I need to dye my hair purple?
Ooh, a little purple tip. I can see it on you.
I was like, maybe we need to do that. But I'm so happy to have you here. And just recently, if you didn't know, Bea was a brand partner, and our bikini and body scrub was in the spring 2025 box, which was so exciting, and we'll get into that later. But to start off, FabFitFun did not start as a box subscription model, right?
Exactly. So we have a kind of unusual history. My background is in content. I was a writer for about 10 years before starting FabFitFun with my two co-founders. And we actually launched it as a media plan. So we wanted to bring the best tips and tricks to living your best life. And so we had a newsletter that went out every single day along with our website. It was a little bit like a digital magazine.
I love that. So every day were you writing the content?
Oh, yes. All day, every day.
And so you have two other co-founders,
yes,
Michael and Daniel. How did you meet them? And how did you also form roles as three co-founders?
So we met through mutual friends. And the idea was that it really was going to be like the next Daily Candy. I'm certainly aging myself with that reference, but I loved it. And, you know, I think at the time, you know, media was very much centered around glossy magazines that were directive of what women were supposed to look like and act like in order to fulfill a very narrow definition of beauty. And we wanted to be more like your friend who was just going to give you that really authentic, good advice. And so as we were thinking about how we split our roles, it was really hard in the beginning. I think we are all very type A personalities. And, you know, picking a lane can be really hard because it means that you're letting go of something. And I don't think that's a skill set that we're great at, especially in the beginning. But I think as we got to know each other more and more, it became very clear that we have very different strengths.
Okay.
And so, you know, my role naturally became focused around the content, whereas, you know, Mike is amazing in terms of marketing and product, and Dan is great at the ops and the legal. And so it was a good mix of skills, I think.
And then just to clarify, you mean product in terms of the technology?
Yes, the website.
And then you curate the products in the box.
Yes. So the weird thing was that, you know, I have zero experience in terms of merchandising. We ran it as a website for about 3 years and realized, you know, we were writing about all these great products. Why not actually, you know, put them on people's doorsteps?
Wow.
And so we needed someone to get the product somehow. And, you know, we are a very, very scrappy team still to this day. And so we didn't hire anyone else. And we thought, okay, let's see if I can do it. And it made sense because I had pretty good relationships in the world of PR for beauty, fashion, and fitness. And we really leveraged those to curate the first few boxes. And then suddenly I had a brand new job. And it was really fun to learn a new skill set in my early 30s. And it was something that I never envisioned myself doing, but I really fell in love with it pretty quickly.
And I think that the editor side, where you're writing and talking about products for years, really gave you the credibility to merchandise because you've probably tested like thousands of beauty products.
That's exactly right. I mean, we had a lot of ideas in terms of what else the business could be outside of the newsletter. But, you know, if you think about the box, we really had established ourselves as authorities in beauty, fashion, and fitness. So when we said, you know, we're not just going to write about these products, we're actually going to find you the best ones at the best prices. I think people understood that concept. And we actually sold out of our first box in about 24 hours. And so again, hindsight's 2020.
Wow.
It really became the rebirth of the business.
So in 2013, you have this idea for the box, and it seemed like you were incubating a few different ideas. Try out this box, 24 hours, they're all gone.
Yes. And I think, look, Mike and Dan, I think, were very confident. They really believed it was going to work. My mindset was like, well, we have 20 amazing ideas. I think one of them will work, but it was not specific to the box. And I think I was, it was a very happy moment, and it really did make sense.
And so once you sold out, it was, I think, about like 2,000 boxes.
Exactly.
I remember reading. And was it just upward and onward success from there?
Yeah. I mean, we weren't exactly sure. At that point, it was kind of like, putting your finger in the air and hoping for the best. So we went from 2,000, then it was 5,000, and then to 10,000. And I remember thinking at the time, if we just hit 100,000 members at any point, how life-changing that would be. And I mean, I couldn't honestly imagine it. And then if you fast forward a couple of years, hitting those million members, I mean, it was just such a crazy roller coaster of a ride.
That's wild to think about, especially in those beginning stages. Like, you're just trying to find one customer, and then the other customer, you're like, I just want a paying customer.
Totally.
And so to see how quickly you were able to grow. However, I can imagine that you probably leveraged your email list from the database that you created through the media side to then transform them into customers.
That was exactly what we did. And so that was like the unique part of our growth, was that we had this relationship already with hundreds of thousands of women who really did trust us. And so that was like the best marketing that we could possibly use. And we had done, I mean, look, it's such a different era if you think back to 15 years ago, but what we had done a lot of as a media brand was tons of cross promotional swaps with other newsletters, other media brands. And so our list was very big, so we had a lot of people to market to in those early days.
And I think, but however, today in like 2025, for brands, like the main focus is like owning your customers and owning that data. And so there is this huge focus on building your email list. And so if you were to continuously build today, like what would you say were like the best ways to build that? Was it the cross promoting?
By the way, I still believe in it. It was funny, digital marketing right now is tough. It has been tough for the past couple of years. And we were just talking about like, look, let's go back to some of these swaps, especially with our we have, thousands of amazing brand partners. We're all trying to achieve the same goal. Right. We are trying to grow together. The whole reason why brands partner with FabFitFun is so they can see that growth. So I definitely think, growing your audience, whether that is through your newsletter or through your social, it's so important. We actually built our own digital community as well. So as part of the FabFitFun membership, members get access to our community that includes forums where members can actually interact with each other. They recommend products, they form friendships, but they can also, talk to myself directly, and they tag me all of the time in terms of what they love and what they hate.
Which is fascinating.
I do, because it's really amazing real-time feedback, and not every member is a part of the community. It really is this very core, highly engaged member. Yes. But it's just an amazing place where we're like, okay, we're talking about 2 different shades of lip gloss. What do you guys actually want to see in the box? And they then get to curate the process with us.
Wow. And I love personally talking to our customers because I learned so much. And even from the product development stage, we'll send out samples to some of our customers. And that's like, I think, the best way to learn. However, recently I found myself where I was listening to so many customers and trying to figure out how could I do exactly what they wanted that I almost was losing sight of my vision of why I started Bea. So how do you balance between listening to what your customers want, but then also like having this big picture vision for the company?
Well, I think you have to use it as an input, right? And it's an incredible one, right? And you want to listen. But if you're listening to all of your customers, they don't always agree. It's a lot of ideas. And they also don't, not everybody understands every facet of the business. Right. And so there's certain things that really have helped guide us in terms of moving the membership forward and how we enhance it. But we can't fulfill every request that everyone makes, and that's okay, right?
Yes.
But we still listen, right? And then it's sort of incorporated into our decision making overall.
I love that. And so going back to the first box, because we just got the spring 2025 box and I'm using my new frying pan. I got my Bea bikini and body scrub, and it's such a beautiful curation. And so thinking back to the first box in 2013, like what do you think, like was there a certain product in there that made it sell out? Like what did you do in the curation that you think really contributed to the success?
So I will say that the very first box, you know, we didn't necessarily have the experience that we have, you know, now 10 plus years later. But there was one specific product that really drove, I think, all of the hype. We had a full-size bottle of Moroccan oil, and it was in 2013.
Oh, that's when they were like
it was the pinnacle of sort of that brand. And, you know, the product cost more than the box itself. And so in addition to that, you were getting, you know, 6 other products. And so that value was really easy to communicate, right? If you just liked Moroccan oil, you were going to be super happy and then get to discover all of these other interesting products. And so that was a huge home run for us. And, you know, I'm sure you know and have experienced this, the beauty world and, you know, all the different sort of categories, you know, they are very small. They do very much talk to each other. And there were, you know, definitely a few key brands along the way that helped to unlock other brand partners. I think, you know, a few years later, we had Dermalogica in the box. Huge. And that for us, in terms of just like brands talking to other brands and saying yes, was like incredibly game changing for us.
And so how did you get Moroccan oil on board first off?
So that was a PR contact.
Okay.
And so it's all, you know, for us, we think about the box as a marketing platform for brands. And we think it's the best marketing platform because you don't pay for it, right?
Right.
FabFitFun is basically covering the costs of the brand's COGS, so cost of goods. And then with that program, you get what feels like a really nice 360 campaign with, you know, inclusion in emails and social and influencers and all these fun things to make it feel really valuable to the brand.
And so when you're now, FabFitFun has millions of subscribers and it's like a household, like the leading box subscription out there. But when you're starting, it seems like you leverage your connections and your network, which is great. But did you experience any kind of imposter syndrome? Like, here's this big vision, Moroccan oil, give me these products.
Oh, no. But yeah.
Like, how did that?
It was all made up. And I was constantly feeling like I was talking about nonsense. And quite frankly, I've heard from brands who I'm still friends with today that I sounded like a crazy person in the first couple of years. And I would go to trade shows and I was very energetic and I would run around and talk to every single person that I possibly could, and I would just, you know, sell this pitch over and over again that it was like, look, it was such a no-brainer. You know, there was no risk in trying the program, and we were, you know, authorities in storytelling. And, you know, I do think that, you know, brands like to tell their story, right? They want their customers to understand what problem they're solving, why they're different, why they're better, how to use their product. And because, you know, we really are storytellers at heart, you know, that was sort of what I was selling to the brands.
And I'm sure they fell in love with you too. Like, I admire how colorful of a person you are. And you also had the credibility of being an editor and like really understanding products that you did like versus didn't like. And so it wasn't like you're just gonna, if you said yes to being part of the box, that you were gonna question what other brands were gonna be.
Totally. And that was, I think that was a key very early on. We really wanted it to feel like a curation.
Okay.
You know, these days, I mean, and it's changed, right? We did like tons of outbound in the early days of FabFitFun because nobody was coming to us. I mean, we had to go to them, but we still, you know, tried and tested every single thing before it goes into the box. And I mean, these days, you know, we see thousands of products before they go into a box each season. We have an amazing consumer insights team in addition to our merchandisers who, you know, test the products and get Q scores for every brand and forecasted ratings. So we want to make sure that the products that we're putting in are actually exceptional.
Right. That makes complete sense. And in terms of like, naturally, it's been about 15 years since you launched. And I remember reading that in 2020 you did a brand revamp, and we're currently with Bea going through this like re-messaging exercise of really understanding like what what's resonating with our customers, like what do they want to see from us, and how can we communicate that super clearly. And so how did you navigate reestablishing your core values and your brand mission?
It's interesting. I think we've done a series of refreshes more than I would say
I like that term. Okay.
Because, and I think it's important, right? And you can think about the world and how much it's evolved over the last 15 years. What the brand looked like 15 years ago would probably not be something that our members would want or accept today. Even I think the quality of the products have also gotten better, right? The brands are better. But I think you have to constantly reinvent yourself and evolve in order to stay relevant.
Yeah.
And I think people understand and appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I do think like our core value has stayed the same. Even in the early days when we were, a website, a media platform, the idea was, that we were finding the very best products and giving you that information and giving you these tips and tricks. And I think that sort of through line around wellness, self-care, and trust more so than anything remains like who we are at the very core.
I like that. And I do like the term refresh because it's not, so for example, for Bea, we were always about like, we're lifestyle skincare that keeps you clean and confident throughout the day. And whether that's sweat, odors, body blemishes, like we want to be there for you because those are insecurities that people experience, but there's nothing wrong with you. There's something that we can address and it's in a premium, elevated way. And so when I was thinking about the brand, I was like, where would people be most like insecure or like care about these issues the most? Oh, the bedroom, when they're probably not wearing clothes. And so that's been the direction. And that's also like, it was we launched officially 2022. Sexual wellness was super hot.
Yes.
And I think that's the other piece is like understanding where the industry is going and not following trends, but just like understanding customer behavior. And so for us, we're like, wait a minute. We thought sexual wellness was this big opportunity, but actually our customers are much broader than that. Like they care about these ingrowns on their bikini line, whether they're going to the beach or if they're trying to get intimate. It's not just in these intimate moments. And part of me was like, I know we need to change this, but a rebrand just feels like really expensive and like this daunting project. But what we've done is just really had a bunch of different customer interactions and interviews and focus groups to then understand what does this refresh look like so that we can just meet and solve problems for our customers a little bit more clearly for them. So I like how you reposition it into like a positive exercise.
Well, I think it is, right? I think if you stay the same, if you stay stagnant, it's almost impossible to survive. I mean, for us, if you look at the world of subscription boxes specifically, when we started, people said they were already outdated, right? The sort of trend had been done and it was over. And obviously we've seen it go up and down and up and down and up and down again. But the number of boxes that used to exist is, very different than what exists today. And I do think, we've had to kind of evolve as a brand in terms of like what people want from us in order to make our members still happy. I mean, I don't know how you do it without evolving.
Right. And I do think that something, and I'm curious to see what you think of like how you've been able to like flourish and become like maintain the leader and stay so relevant. But when you think about a bunch of the other box subscription models that were super popular in that era, I think how you stand out is the customization aspect. And also like, I love that you do full-size products because we were just talking about this before is like sometimes when you're traveling, you might be traveling for a week or maybe 4 days and like a travel size is not enough. So then are you just packing multiple, which is basically taking up the same amount of time and room as a full-size product.
And cost, by the way. I mean, it's interesting because if you think about the componentry that is needed for a sample, it's not inexpensive.
It's like the same price as a brand, I can tell you.
Well, and that's the thing, but it doesn't deliver the same kind of value to a customer. And for us, at the end of the day, we are thinking about how to create the most value for our member. And value is obviously, in part discount, right?
Yes.
And that's a big part of what we deliver to our members, but it's, not just like the money that you save, it's also the time that you save, the ease in terms of like how you're getting these products. So I think for one, we thought that full-size products were just going to be better for the member. Yeah. We also wanted to be cross-category, right? We had been a lifestyle brand, and there's no such thing as like a sample-size scarf. So, we wanted it to kind of feel cohesive. So that was a big part of it as well. And I think sometimes, with the monthly subscriptions, that were built around samples, they're really fun because discovery is fun. We're built on discovery. We love trial. We love getting new things. Your mailbox is constantly filled with bills and all of this nonsense. You want something nice and pretty to come every once in a while. But it can also start to feel very overwhelming when you get all of this stuff and you don't actually end up using it. And suddenly, your drawers are filled and now your trash cans are filled. And we wanted stuff that was, actually going to be useful, right? That you would want to have, that you will feel good about getting.
I completely agree with that. And so it's interesting that you say lifestyle, because something that even when we are talking to our customers, it's like all this idea of like lifestyle skincare, how can you integrate into my routine? And I'm not like taking time out of my day to use your products or use XYZ. And I think that you started at this media platform and you do have so many other features of your community and your platform in addition to the box. But I think that the lifestyle, like transitioning a brand from being just a brand that sells products into a lifestyle brand, is key in terms of long-term success. So if you were starting on the product side and started on the box side, how do you envision building out that lifestyle? Do you think the content component is key?
I do. I think, look, I think consumers have changed. At one point, the label and the price tag were the only thing that mattered, right? And that was sort of how you were making your decision. I think people are just much more savvy than they were 15 years ago, and people care a lot about what they're putting in their body and what they're putting on their body. So, being able to tell that story, to go, beyond just like, oh, it's a pretty product, right? Yes. Like that it's actually effective, why it's working, how it's working, where it's sourced from. I mean, these are things that people really care about. People want more clean products. They care about the ingredients. So, I do think, that's really crucial because people want you to solve their problem, right? Like they want to understand how your product is going to help them, how it's going to improve their lives. And if you don't have that communication, I mean, you're just one of now thousands. I mean, that's the crazy thing about today's world is, it's easier than ever to launch a brand, but because there are so many brands launching, it's harder than ever to break through that noise.
I agree. And I will say that like what I love also about FabFitFun is that you do mix these mass like tier 1 products that are, been around for years and years and years that people would love to have and love to try out with discovery brands. And I will say that Bea, like being in that spring 2025 box, was life-changing for the brand. And it's such an incredible marketing vehicle for especially like a discovery brand to be able to be in the hands of people all across the country and world, test out your product, learn about your brand, and hopefully also from there, once they use it all, then they're already hooked in to then become a lifelong customer. And so for any indie brand founders that are listening, what do you look for in a brand when there are the sea of products out there to decide like how you're curating these boxes?
That's a good question. And we love, by the way, the new, because we have these sort of tried and true brands that establish the sort of value, but then in order to keep it exciting, we want to introduce them to new brands and tell them, what's going to be the next viral trend, what's going to be the new solution that they might not have tried before. I will say, in terms of what we look for, effectiveness is probably the number one thing that we're looking for. And we do have, dozens of people testing and trying all of the products to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do. I think we look at founder stories because we really believe if the person behind the brand is intelligent and smart and, showing up, that really helps be able to translate to our customers. I think also for us, our members do like newness. So thinking about subcategories and introducing like products that they might not have tried before. So that's why I do think the scrub was really interesting, because it is multitasking, which I think our customers love. Anything to save time, quite frankly, is also a big win in terms of how we think about product curation. But then it's fun things like, something like Freck, which is, the little freckles, which is something that, not all of our members are going to be into it, but a subset of people are going to be, intrigued to try a product that they would have never thought about otherwise.
And the neat part too is that FabFitFun can curate the box for you, and you have so many different data points that the curation is amazing. But then there's also the option where they can pick and choose what they want as well.
Exactly. So I would describe it as like a prefix menu of, the best in beauty and fashion and fitness. And, look, when we have so many members, what happened naturally is that membership naturally diversified. And so what a 16-year-old in San Diego wants is probably not the same thing as a 65-year-old woman in Kansas City. And we have both of those women in our membership. And so in order to satisfy them, we did think that customization was important. So we also look at things as, we look at the box basically as a puzzle. Okay. And so we are trying to make sure that, within all of the cohorts of our membership, whether it's age, ethnicity, where you live, or just personal taste, there's always going to be a product that you can choose that you will like. And so looking at things like dislike overlap to make sure that, again, like we're meeting the needs of all of our different members is how the sort of holistic box comes together.
I love that. And from a brand side, I was very impressed that even before we started speaking to your team seriously about getting into the seasonal box, there was all these test scores and testing on all our products and our brand and how my founder story and like what that meant. And so it's fascinating to see how much testing and data points that you get based on customer feedback before you even think about the actual curation.
No, I know. It's crazy. We are much more data driven than I think people realize. And it's a mix, right? Because a lot of it is like our gut instinct as merchandisers, where we see the trends going, what ingredients we think are going to, resonate, next year, because we're also doing the curation very far in advance. So right now we're curating spring of 2026, which seems crazy. But because of the quantities, that's sort of the timeline that we need to make it all make sense. But I do think, when you combine that sort of like these amazing women who know so much about beauty and so much about fashion, and then you take the data that's coming straight from our members, that's what I think creates that sort of like winning combination.
I have to add that our buyer, Tegan, I've been asking her all these preemptive questions about our future products. I was like, so what do you think about the FabFitFun customer thinking about this? And do you think this word or this word? And she's honestly able to give really good feedback because your team goes through so much data on a daily basis that I do feel like as a brand or just someone like as a customer, it's fascinating to know how much you really care about the curations and really elevating their lifestyle in a very specific way that's well-rounded, not just a beauty focus, that I love even like learning from your data points. Okay, what should we be thinking about for 2026, 2027, which I absolutely love. And so going into, Win Boxes release for every season, I notice a lot of reality stars are posting. Some of my favorite Bachelor contestants are posting, and I can imagine some of them, there's paid partnerships and whatnot, but for a brand that's trying to develop a gifting strategy, what would your advice be?
Look, I think the world of creators has changed a lot. And I mean, we were a brand that was built on Instagram and influencers, like no doubt. And we can't even say influencer. Influencers, the words change, right?
Like, are they a creator? Are they this? And that?
But look, I think the reality is, I think our strategy early on was to do as much of it internally as we can. And in today's world where, micro creators are more and more important, and those relationships can be often driven through gifting rather than paid relationships, just things like, DMs on Instagram can go really far when you're offering someone to test a great product. I mean, that's the thing for a lot of creators, they want the product to try, they want to build their audience. So being able to give them new things to talk about on their channels, it ends up actually being a mutually beneficial relationship. We've also found, we do whitelisting for a lot of our creator partnerships where we're basically paying to boost their posts.
Okay.
And so what's interesting is that basically increases the reach of their posts and also builds their following, right? And they're not paying for it. We are. And so again, this sort of mutually beneficial relationship I think is really important. And then outside of it being just monetary, I think goes really far as well, right? Because if you have a relationship with someone that's not just transactional, it really makes a difference. And, I feel a little sad in a pre-pandemic world, we did tons of events. It was, a really big piece of the sort of FabFitFun world. And it allowed us opportunities to, meet and develop these real IRL relationships with all these people. And we don't do it as much now, but I think we're slowly dipping our toes back into the water because it does make such a difference, even in the world of founders, right? I mean, being able to have female founder dinners again. I mean, those were things
even
that were
your cocktail
missing.
hour last year, and I finally got to meet you.
It was amazing.
This is so fun. I was like, okay, I think the in real life human connection is very hard to replicate online.
It is.
And I think there is a way to, DM and build those relationships to an extent. But I love between the founders that you work with and the brands that you work with, but also the individuals who love sharing their experiences, opening and using the products in the boxes. That 360 approach, I think, is a really great way to build the network and community.
Yeah. And I will say the other thing that I think has changed is that, while content creators are incredible and so important to building, I think, any business, the consumer also wants to be a part of it. And they want to feel like if you're gifting a creator, they should also have the opportunity to share as well. And so that's been, I think, a growing part. I guess it's always really been a part of FabFitFun is that while, yes, we do tons of gifting to, talent, we definitely work with a lot of reality stars. They're always really fun and they work really well for us. But being able to then also, gift to our own members, I mean, they are our best evangelists and they understand the product, and while they don't have huge followings, still that word of mouth is so powerful these days in this crazy digital world. I mean, I really do think it makes a difference.
And sometimes the people who just love your brand or love getting a box, the content that they create is really good. And so to be able to partner with people who might not have a big following, but they can provide quality content that you can whitelist or use on your own social platforms, I think is a really that's something that we've been focusing on more and more, just because we don't have a budget to pay people. And I love working with people who are just overly passionate and they're getting these new products that they're enjoying and seeing how creative they can be with them.
Totally, because they're the people who actually love it, right?
Yes, so they're actually going to buy it and share with their friends and be they're already that built-in loyal customer. So how do you just amplify their voices further so that you can really reach their networks as much as you can?
100%. I will say the other piece that's been interesting for us, and I say this specifically because I think you're so good at it, we use our team in our content a lot as well, because they are the ones also that are living and breathing the products all day, every day. I mean, they're literally sifting through thousands of products in order to get to the best of the best. So when April and Tegan on our beauty team, talk about their favorite products in a sale, it's real. I mean, this is what they're using and loving, and, they know better than anybody else, what's actually going to be the best products.
And they see so many, Tegan, it was sadly during the LA fires, and she thought she had to evacuate, and she texted me after. She was like, hey, I thought I had to evacuate, and I didn't, but I have to let you know that my first grab, I put some Bea wipes in my bag. And I was like, oh my gosh, not only are you just reviewing products for your job, but I feel like your team sees it as a lifestyle, just how you're presenting it to your customer base of hey, this is lifestyle. Here's some beauty. Here's some a pan or a blanket or whatever it might be. They also live and breathe the brands, which I think only makes stronger relationships between the brands. And then you're also building these super strong relationships with your customers and creators to build this overall huge ecosystem.
Well, and it's funny. I feel like when people join the FabFitFun team, oftentimes, one of their first questions is like, who is the FabFitFun member?
Yeah.
And I think we've gone back and forth because there was a point where I'm like, it's everyone, right? And that's still a goal, right? We think every woman, I will say, can enjoy the products that we curate and find something that feels, very valuable and authentic to her. But now my answer more than that is actually you, right? That the people who are coming in to work for us, like I want them to want every single thing that we put in the box. I want them to love those products more than anything else and feel like, they're creating a box that makes them really happy, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to, I think, translate to our member more so than anything else.
And so when you hire, are you hiring for experience? Are you hiring for that passion for the brand, or just like an obsession for the vertical that they would be buying for?
I think it's definitely a little bit of everything. One, I think, a passion for FabFitFun and what we're trying to create is the most important piece of it, because at the end of the day, if you don't love what you do, you're not going to do it as well as you could. And it's a lot. We ask a lot of our team. I mean, we have a very, I think, fun job, but it's hard work and the expectations are really high. And so, finding people that are really excited about FabFitFun, about the vertical, I think is more important, honestly, than experience for us, because we see that hustle and that drive and that enthusiasm goes further than anything else, because we also do things differently than I would say a traditional retailer. Our, partnerships team, our buyers are less buyers and more salesmen, I think, than anything else. And so it's an interesting dynamic in terms of the qualities that we look for. But I think passion really is the number one.
And going off that, like your team, I think only takes from like the leadership. And when I look at you, I remember meeting you and you're such a colorful, fun, vibrant person. And, I said that when I first met you, you had purple hair, you had this gorgeous outfit on, and you're so down to earth despite building this massively successful company. And when I was 22 starting my first company, Beautini, I sometimes felt like I had to dress a certain way for people to take me seriously. And I just so admire how authentic you lead. And so how did you learn to lean into your authentic self and develop your leadership style?
Oh, I mean, look, I think for even probably still today, sometimes, you fake it till you make it, and you just kind of have to, hope for the best. Especially in the early days, I had been a writer for a very long time, which is a very sort of, private, I guess, skill, right? I wasn't with a lot of people. I was writing from home. I mean, I was writing for magazines and different newspapers. And so it was, very new to me to start to lead what has now become a very big team. I think, my number one piece of advice is I don't really ask my team to do anything that I wouldn't do or I haven't done at some point. And I think they see me continue to roll up my sleeves. And sometimes, look, there was a point where, we didn't have a big ops team. And so we were trying to understand, if the products were going to break in the box. And so I stood on, the top of the stairs and I was throwing boxes down the stairs, thinking about what would happen if FedEx did something similar, and, just trying to really learn and understand, what we needed to do in order to, fix a potentially big challenge. And I think for me, I always want to keep learning. I want to keep evolving. I think it's, I think we think about learning in terms of like high school and college, and then it sort of stops. But I think, if we really want to be great leaders, we have to continue to learn and understand. And, I thought of myself as a very creative person, but like put myself in a very specific box. I thought I was going to be a writer or work in entertainment for my entire life. And, thinking about things like negotiating deals and terms was not something that I ever thought I could or would do. But you really do have to get outside of your comfort zone and push yourself and understand that, that probably means you're going to fail. It probably means that, you're going to feel embarrassed and insecure, and that's okay. And it's not always going to go your way. I got hundreds of no's before I got very good yeses, and it was just kind of showing up and hoping for the best and realizing that eventually those no's were going to turn into yeses. And that was, it's a little bit of resilience. It's a little bit of just like, again, just faking it and hoping for the best, quite frankly.
And trusting that you'll figure it out.
Yeah, and I guess believing in the overall picture, right? Like that was the reality was that, even though the vision was big and far away, it felt very real. Like we believed in what we were building. We knew that we could, create an audience by driving this incredible value. And we knew that we had all of these insights around the best products in the world. And if we could just put it all together, that it was going to create this magic. It was just then making sure that, the brands and the members also saw it with us.
And for the days that because naturally, like, it's hard sometimes when you have this clarity on this big vision. Like, this is the end goal for the company. This is what I want it to be. But then when you're sitting at home or in your office trying to figure out how to get from point A to B, when that big picture is Z, like, did you ever have like a mindset shift, or was there something that, like, on the days that you were questioning it or not feeling super confident and, maybe having that imposter syndrome of like, how the heck am I ever going to get there? Like, do you feel like you mentally had to tell yourself something, or did you do something along the way that really got you to really, because I think also that sometimes, like, you have these mindset blocks. You can see a big picture, but if you don't really believe you can get there, you might not get there.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think one thing that I'm very lucky to have is a really amazing support system. I have 2 young daughters who are now 9 and 12. And, I often feel like I'm, failing them as well because I work so much. But they are my biggest cheerleaders, and they, tell the world how amazing they think I am, which, it's really, nothing makes you feel better, especially when you're constantly worried as a mom. Similar, I think, my husband, we are a team, and I think, moms always do a lot, but I mean, he is like there all the time. He steps up and he makes it possible. And then look, having 2 amazing co-founders you can trust and rely on and brainstorm with, and realize that, look, there's going to be really big challenges. And, even in today's world, there's good days and there's bad days, quite frankly. Being able to lean on each other, as well as this incredible team that we've built over the past 15 years. I think that's been the mindset shift, right? Is that, sometimes I can't see it, quite frankly. I still feel like I'm not doing everything I can be doing, and that there's always ways that I can be doing better. But when you hear that support from your family, and when you get that support from your team, it's like, it does make a difference. It helps boost you up in the times when you're not feeling good. And so I've just been better at listening to them and believing it, honestly. You have to.
You have to. And so going back to your family, your daughters, I read that, so in 2013, the week that you launched your first box, you gave birth to your first daughter?
Yes, because I'm very good at planning.
Oh my God. I feel like that I would do something like that.
Yeah, it was not the best choice. And although here's the thing, I will say, it's very funny. I was like a very nervous pregnant person.
Really?
Yes.
You seem so chill.
Oh no, I'm the opposite. I'm very chill on the outside, and I am a crazy type A person inside.
Okay, you kind of sound like me.
So it's interesting. But I was worried, and I remember I was in the hospital, and I was having contractions, and my co-founder was texting me about something like so ridiculous, and we were talking about payroll or something, and I'm like, we're going back and forth. But the reality is it was actually beneficial to me because I was so nervous that having something else to think about was wonderful, because I was so scared that like something was going to go wrong that I was happy to have
a whole business to worry about.
Yes.
So if anyone's nervous about being pregnant, just start a business.
No, it is. It's true.
Have a co-founder to text you.
Yes.
And then the pregnancy will be the least of your worries.
That's exactly right.
And so I'm 33. I'm getting married next year. And my mindset as a founder right now that I struggle with is like, get your business in a good spot, then have kids. So how did you, which I don't know, like, I think that's like an idea, and I don't know, I think life happens and you can't just put your life on hold. At the same time, you also like have this vision, you have a dream. So how did you, like, especially in that early days, like how did you navigate becoming a mom while growing the business?
I mean, look, I think we are always shooting for an ideal time, an ideal time to launch a business, an ideal time to get married, an ideal time to have a baby. Unfortunately, it usually doesn't work out in the ways that we envision. And you're never going to be ready. Life is always going to throw you another curveball, because you can prep and practice for everything, but who knows what's actually lying around the corner? Who knows there's going to be a pandemic that sends everything upside down? I will say, we were very early into the business, and so we didn't have an HR team when I was pregnant. I remember I was like Googling what happens when someone goes on maternity leave, and like,
do we have maternity leave
I'm like, we don't really understand. And so, what happened was, Summer, my older daughter, was raised a lot at the office, and it's actually easy when they're very little. They're they don't do much. So you can put them in a little carrier. They sleep for 90% of the day. And so that was really fun and probably unusual. I think the second time around, I was much better, and I took a maternity leave because I think it's very healthy for women to be able to take that time. And but I think we were learning as we went, and there's no perfect answer, but you make it work. And that's sort of the beautiful thing about moms. We were talking about this earlier, that I really do think mothers are the ultimate multitaskers. Yes. We don't have a choice. So you just kind of show up and make it work. And I do think now my daughters are such little hustlers. They are, I think, very likely to be entrepreneurs. You can see it. And I think it's partially because they grew up in the office. They love the kind of world in which they are surrounded by. And so I feel very proud of that. I'm glad that they have that little spirit now in them.
I love it. I used to have my little sister who's 11 years younger than me. She would stay with me in the summer to go to ballet camp, and I'd work in the office till like 11 p.m. and she would just have to sit there and do her thing, watch TV, whatever. And now she's like going total corporate. And I'm like, oh, was that because of me? No.
Right. Well, it's still like I still think she's, seeing the hard work pay off, right? And so that's what's really interesting, that you can do anything and you don't have to do everything. I think oftentimes as women, we feel like we have to check every single box in order to lead a successful life. And I do not believe that's true. But I think, if you want to be a mom, if you want to, start a company, these things are possible. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to always look like what you expect it to look like, but you can
figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
And your time management just gets infinitely better.
Yes.
Okay, I love it. And so let's go into your like day-to-day breakdown, because I'm fascinated with how much you get done, and it seems like you have such a close family. What time do you wake up in the morning?
So I think it's a hereditary thing. I wake up really early. I wake up at 5.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, every single morning.
Yes.
Even on the weekend.
Yes. And it's just like a internal alarm clock that goes off. It's just one of those weird things that's always been like that.
And what time do you go to bed?
I go to bed at like 11.
Okay. Oh, so you don't, okay, because it's funny. I just got an Oura Ring, and I'm obsessed with my sleep score now and trying to get 8 hours.
I'm working on it. It is, I've never been a person that needs a ton of sleep. And so I would like to get a little more. I've gotten better over the years, but I do like waking up early in the morning. I like being in the house before everybody else is awake and all of the chaos starts, and being able to like answer emails, go through Slack before a little of the craziness.
And so you wake up, and what is your morning skincare routine currently like?
Oh, so morning is a little different. So I will wake up, and it's just actually cold water when I wake up. So that I think is I think that's a little secret that I think people don't know, because I'm full skincare routine at night, layering, double cleansing, all of the things, but then just cold water. I also work out in the morning, so I try and I do a lot of Orange Theory. It's a little bit of addictive, but it's fun.
Love that.
But I try and go early so that I can come back and be home to help my daughters get ready.
Okay.
So I'll go to like a 6 o'clock class, come back, make them breakfast, get them ready, pack them up, and then I'll do like an actual skincare routine, which is more of like sort of a traditional, doing all the toner and the moisturizer. I think SPF, we've all learned, is the most important thing.
Which SPF are you using right now?
I like Innisfree. It's the one that I'm using.
Yes,
currently.
I just used that today too.
You did?
The white bottle with orange text. That's so funny.
It's a really good one because it doesn't like leave any kind of white
and you
cast.
put your makeup right on
exactly.
it. I love that. Okay, and then what time are you sitting down to start work? Or are you kind of
So I will start once I wake up at 5, I'll do 30 minutes of work just because I like to make sure that everything is addressed.
And are you having coffee before this?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I avoided caffeine for many years when I had my kids. I don't know what's happened to me lately. I've gone down the caffeine rabbit hole. I'm back on coffee and Diet Coke, which is so embarrassing. But my God, I really like it now again. But yeah, so I will have coffee, and then once my husband is really taking the girls to school these days, and we are now in the office 3 days a week, which is, I think, become a really good balance for, having the opportunity to have that in-person communication, develop those relationships, make sure that, everyone is aligned. But then having the flexibility of 2 days to, not sit in traffic for 90 minutes and be able to work from home in sweats and not actually shower and do all the stuff that we do on days from home.
I do love that. Like having my sweatpants at night and wearing like a cute little blazer on top for the Zoom meetings.
Yeah, exactly.
I do love that, but I also think there's the importance of collaboration by being in the office too.
It's also just the difference of look, you're going to have different kinds of conversations when you are in person. Yeah. I think we all understand that Zoom fatigue is real. And, you are aware when you're sitting in front of a screen that you don't want to waste someone's time. And so you don't spend you don't have the questions of how was your weekend?
True.
How is your life going? Or just what are some things that you could do to make the business better, right? It's really okay, let's get through the little points that the meeting,
just check
the
off
agenda,
the boxes.
right? Whereas suddenly when you're in an office again, you do have these conversations that can be really interesting and creative and collaborative that, don't happen as frequently, I think, when we're just on a screen.
I agree with that. And so if you are in the office, what time do you finally get home at night?
So I leave early. I leave at 5.
Okay.
And LA traffic is the worst. It's an hour to get home. It's 30 minutes to get to the office, which is lovely, but getting home is tough.
Okay.
And I will take a break. So I will, from 6 to 8:30, I'm with the kids. We're having dinner. We're playing Boggle is our new habit. I'm very good at Boggle, but I've inspired them to get better, so it's cute. But then that means that, look, at 9 o'clock, I'm back on the computer again for, another couple of hours. But that's the balance that I seek in my life, to be able to have that time with my family and with my kids. And I don't expect anyone else to live the sort of crazy schedule, but I think this is sort of the balance that works for me. And I don't think I was always as good at it. I mean, pre-pandemic, I was in the office until much later. I also, I did not work out. I spent no time on self-care. It was only in the pandemic where suddenly we were together all of the time. There wasn't, the time crunch of sitting in a car that I'm okay, I can go for a run for 45 minutes and don't feel the mom guilt that I have to rush home to my kids. And I feel it's made me such a healthier person, just having more time for just an hour to yourself. It makes me a happier, better person. I'm a better leader. I'm a better mom. It took me a very long time to learn that lesson, but, grateful that eventually it took me a pandemic to get there, but I got there.
But that kind of goes back to the boxes for FabFitFun, is that you are always trying to find new products that elevate people's lifestyle. So it's a little bit of wellness, it's a little bit of beauty, it's a little bit for home care, and just whatever it might be. And I do love that you personally live what you're hoping to achieve on the work side. And especially as a woman who's like in her early 30s trying to figure out like what does that next life chapter look like, where you still want to be super successful, you don't want to lose sight on like your dream and your vision, but also like how do these other pieces of your business or life really come all together. And I love hearing just your breakdown of like, okay, you definitely prioritize family time. You also prioritize your time for yourself and being the best mom and wife and leader that you can be, while also like growing this widely successful business. Like I'm such a fan.
I will say it took me a really long time to get there, because the early days did not look anything like that. But I think, look, we say it all the time. I think as women, you know, we're really good at taking care of other people. We are a little less good at taking care of ourselves. And, you know, that's part of sort of the base of FabFitFun is that even just this box, this little bit of self-care that we're creating, you know, each season, you know, is more sometimes than we realize, right? Because we need to put that extra effort in. Otherwise, look, I want to do everything I can for my kids. I want to do everything I can for my husband. I want to do everything that I can for the team. But I do it so much better when I'm also taking care of myself.
And do you feel like you're saying no to a lot more like social events or networking?
Yes, there's always something that has to give.
Okay.
And look, I think, you know, in the early days of FabFitFun, you know, I was traveling nonstop. Mm-hmm. I was networking nonstop. I was at every event that you could that I was invited to. It was a yes for me. I was there and happy to be there. I think now, you know, we are a different size team. Mm-hmm. I have amazing people on our merchandising and partnerships team who, you know, are in a slightly different stage of life and really enjoy that part of it and are able to take on more of that role. And so for me, it's allowed, you know, it's allowed myself to create a little bit more balance. But that's the problem. You know, I often think, you know, my friendships have taken a back seat every now and again, but I think, you know, we are also of an age where we understand that, right?
Like we're the true friends understand.
Correct. And you know, fine, maybe it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, you pick up still where you left off in that last text and no one feels bad. You understand the love is still there. That sort of relationship that you've created means so much at this point of life.
I love that. And I do think that like understanding what your business needs are and like being able to give, like, you know, I'm obviously in the beginning stages, so like the networking and being there is important, but then also like allowing team members to also have their moments to shine, and then just know that like as life goes on and you enter different life stages, like your business will also enter those different stages. And so it's just like figuring out what are their needs personally, professionally, and trying to navigate them both.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, look, for so long, I think I was of the mindset like I can just do it better and I might as well do it myself. And, you know, as, you know, just, you know, my life changed, whether that was like having kids or getting older, you know, you have to give up some of the responsibilities or, you know, the business growing. And, you know, realizing like, okay, wow, people are coming with a different experience. They're coming with a different set of ideas, and they're able to grow it in a completely different way than I might have been able to do it. And allowing them to have that opportunity, to allow them to have that accountability, I think has made our team so much better. I mean, I do think our team really does act like owners of FabFitFun because they are, quite frankly. They all have equity in the company. And I think, you know, it's been really beneficial to the business and also to their growth. I mean, they are killing it day after day.
And they stay for so long because they continuously learn and evolve, which I absolutely love. And I feel like I have so many notes that I'm taking from this conversation to bring back to Bea, just personally, professionally. I can't thank you enough for taking the time. I know that you have a lot of commitments in your life, so for you to speak and share your insights with me, it means the world. And thank you so much for being on the Bear It All podcast.
Well, you are amazing. I know members were so excited about the product and they're excited to get more, and we love being able to feature, you know, brands like yours that have such, you know, a mission and a strong female foundation. I mean, these are incredible things, and we love that you're solving problems for real women and things that, you know, are hard to talk about sometimes. And I think that's really amazing. So
that
thank you for having me.
So happy. And I think that's really about like listening to your customer and creating product that they actually need versus like, oh, what do I think they need?
Exactly.
And that's what you do so well. So I think it's fun to see that there's such a crossover in customer bases because they are the same and they both love and value similar things. So it's like, how do we approach it from a brand side? And then how do you approach it from your side to elevate these customers' lives in so many different ways?
That's the hope, right?
Yes. The hope and the dream and what we're striving for.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much. And thank you guys so much for listening. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. Bye.